London has been at the forefront of musical innovation since the arrival of the Beatles in the 1960s. Today, artistic creativity thrives in the rapidly gentrifying streets of areas like Shoreditch, Dalston and Hackney. We spent a month following musician Graham Dunning to gain an insider's view of London's experimental music scene and to discover how these sound artists live in Europe's most expensive city.
While it was experimental, what I was kind of doing, really, I was trying to write normal music or normal electronic music, but without necessarily having access to the proper equipment to do that with, which is strange because that's kind of what my process has returned to now, really. It's kind of trying to make electronic music, but without using a computer and without necessarily using actual drum machines either, and just kind of coming about it from a different angle, I suppose. The sort of turntable sequencer that I use at the moment, it's very kind of ramshackle and temperamental, really, but that's a kind of part of the process which I think is quite important to my work, really, in that I embrace as much as anything. I think the way that I work is to set up some parameters, usually some limitations within which to work, and then see what comes out of it, really. I'm really interested in improvisation and how that can be a form of composition in itself. Some of the time I might be shaking around the whole record player, which might not be making that much sound in itself, but I think the actual physicality of doing it is more interesting to watch, and I think it kind of gives a different dynamic to a performance.
In addition to his solo work, Graham also collaborates with saxophonist Colin Webster to give live improvised performances.
Obviously, it's a bit different to working with someone who's playing a turntable as opposed to someone who's playing piano or guitar. You've got kind of a lot more freedom sonically, I think, and a lot more inspiration to work off of.
We're both kind of avoiding the traditional musical sounds which you would make with either of those instruments.
Obviously, you usually just blow through the mouthpiece to get the sound, but you can manipulate the reed in different ways to get different sounds that are not the conventional sounds, obviously. Yeah, there's different things to do with taking the saxophone apart, just using different sections of it or muting sections of it. Yeah, we don't go with any framework or ideas beforehand. We just start.
And yeah, it feels like we just really trust each other, and there's this kind of unspoken connection when you're improvising with someone whereby you have a sixth sense of what they're going to do next.
As a prominent figure in London's experimental music scene, Graham also presents a radio show on NTS, where he invites fellow artists to share and discuss their music. We accompanied Graham one Friday morning when he interviewed fellow artist Mark Wagner.
There's almost too much going on. It's can be a form of pressure and a form of sort of overkill almost. There's an incredible amount of creative activities, of artists, of events. Sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to stand out, to be original, to be noticed, for example.
Evidently, it's not all plain sailing for experimental artists in London. The pressures of living in an overpriced and overstimulated metropolis can take their toll.
I lived here for so long and I see so many changes now. I lived here for like over 30 years, so the London of 1980, the London of 1990 or the London of 2000 are all different cities. The city is kind of disappearing, really, and this is like a kind of enclave, maybe, what Ryan is doing here with his space.
Ryan's studio space in Borough Market provides a platform for artists to share their music, attracting experimental musicians from around the world. Gintas flew over from Lithuania to perform with Richard in a duo that utilised processed sounds for an apocalyptic effect.
There's not necessarily always the best audiences or, you know, things like that, financial considerations from it.
How we survive is doing some teaching, doing some sound workshops, some sound walks.
Yeah, I love it in London. It's a bit of a cliche, but it goes in cycles, you know, things crop up, things die away, but it always seems to be things happening.
It's very twofold. Its pros are often its cons. It's an amazing place, incredibly vibrant.
I think also the people that come to London is the most interesting thing, you know? The chance to meet people and to make contacts, and this is the possibility, you know?
There are still cheap ways to live in London, I think, you know, if you know how to look for it, I guess. My ideal would be to make a living from my art practice, but also I'm quite realistic about the fact that that might not happen, and I'm also quite adamant that I don't want to start kind of changing what I do so that I can make more money out of it. I'm not quite sure where I see it going. I'm quite enjoying what I'm doing at the moment, really, so more of doing the same stuff, really.